Hello and welcome. We're here today to talk a little bit more about a hot topic, which is AI, and where it sits and how it's being utilised, and more to the point, how we can potentially help. I'm joined today by Edmund.
Hi Andy.
Who is from Incentra, one of our strategic partners here at Example IT, and we're going to explore some of the capabilities and some of the nuances and what's the words that are out there. We're here to talk a little bit about AI and how it's being experienced in the world and what we can do to help customers with their journey. So what are Incentra seeing in the marketplace today?
Yeah, there's been a huge explosion over the last year or two in AI with the advent of things like ChatGPT coming to everybody's kind of consciousness. But particularly in the business world, there's lots of things that people are concerned about and risks that they perceive, not least, how safe is the information and how are we going to get a return on the investment around it.
Yeah, it's quite tricky to look at what AI means to everybody. So what's it really all about?
Well, we've been thinking about AI for years. It's not a new concept.
No.
Go back to 2001 Space Odyssey or anywhere you like. But it suddenly came really into people's consciousness when it started to be able to respond in a natural way to questions that you might ask it with responses that actually make sense, a bit like having a conversation. And
like
suddenly,
we're doing here.
like we're doing here. I don't think I'm AI, but who knows. And so that's really the kind of turning point. Things like ChatGPT have become part of the vernacular, but for businesses, there's some significant questions around it, around how to protect the information, their proprietary corporate information, and ensure that it's used in the right ways.
Yeah, so what are the differences between, we're hearing about ChatGPT,
yeah.
and obviously Microsoft's is Copilot. We're hearing about Bing Chat Enterprise that was gone now, but what's actually the differences between the different models that AI are around now?
Yeah, so lots of vendors, as you can imagine, have been building these models, and ChatGPT came to the fore. It's based on a model called OpenAI. And Microsoft has long been an investor in OpenAI and has brought the same kind of technology, basically the same origins, into Copilot. The big differences really are around how the information is used and the surface area of the information that the AI models, these large language models as they're called, have access to.
How does Microsoft handle the data? That's your data that you're looking at, and certainly on the Copilot side of things. But how does Microsoft handle that data?
Yeah, so before we maybe even talk about Microsoft, we could think about things like ChatGPT. And it's commonly understood that if you put a question in ChatGPT, it might use that question to give somebody else an answer. Or if you ask it to look at a document, it could use that information to share with others. Microsoft takes a different stance, using the same technology, but protecting your corporate information so that it's not exposed to the wider public or wider other organizations asking similar questions. And it does that by leveraging the tenants that you have with Microsoft, where you're already storing your information that's already protected by their privacy agreements and your service level agreements with Microsoft.
So that's what Microsoft is Copilot, yes. So that's what makes Copilot different, or is there a lot more to it?
Yeah, so Copilot's been used, as Microsoft often do. They've just suddenly found a brand and they're sticking it everywhere. So Copilot's been used to describe many different things. And in general, when Microsoft talk about Copilots, they're talking about many different types of AI-related kind of technologies. There are ostensibly three important levels that you might want to think about now. You mentioned something that used to be called Bing Chat Enterprise, which is now Microsoft Copilot. But the real distinction is how you use the Copilots with your Microsoft 365. If you're using Microsoft 365 and your data is stored within Microsoft, using a business plan or an enterprise plan, then using Copilot with Microsoft is protecting that information within the estate. It's not being shared out more widely. But Microsoft Copilot in and of itself, within, for example, a Bing browser, if you throw a load of corporate information into it without having a license, it might well go into, just as ChatGPT would, the public pool of knowledge. The big distinction is, once you're licensed for a business or enterprise plan within Microsoft 365, using Copilot, whether it's the free Microsoft Copilot capabilities, Copilot Pro, which adds some functionality into the Office suite, or Copilot for Microsoft 365, which is probably what most people would start to think about. That's going to protect your information further. The key capabilities, I guess, of Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365, horrible set of words to stick together, but you get the drift, is that it integrates not just that data protection, but also access to those Copilot tools, the conversational Copilot, and also things like coaching in documents and emails right into your Microsoft Office applications.
So it can tell me how to write my letters easily for me?
It can either...
Or emails?
Well, it starts off with some content you've already got. So you can ask it questions about, what do I know about my customer here? Or if you're looking at this email thread, maybe suggest a response to the email. But once you've written a document or you've written an email, you can also say, how does this sound? Give me some advice about the way I've written this. And the coaching capability allows you to see whether you're being kind of formal or informal, polite or too demanding, various advice around that kind of thing, which is increasingly starting to become quite valuable to improve the quality of business communications.
That is good. But what about asking questions? So you said about asking questions earlier. What if I want to find out how much my boss earns?
Well,
this is something that's come up in the news and things.
Yeah, so we talked earlier about protecting the information from the kind of public AI models, and of course that's really critical for corporate, commercial, sensitive, proprietary information. But it's also just as important to ensure that people within the organization don't have access to things that they shouldn't. And I think it's crucial to recognize that Copilot is using technology that's already in Microsoft 365. You're already able to search broadly across Microsoft 365, and the permissions that people are given to data across 365 are managed through the Graph API, the Microsoft 365 Graph.
So what can we do as partners of Microsoft and providing that professional services to help customers get started? Because customers are going to go, okay, what do I buy off the shelf? And there are, as you've said, lots of different options there. So which option should they be going for? Where should they start?
But I think your previous point really touches on some of the key prerequisites. This isn't just about buying a license and turning it on. Because while there's some really easy functionality, it's great to have a summary of the meeting you've just had in Teams, for example. This question around governance of the information is really important, both from the point of view of access and from the point of view of the quality of the data. So from that access point of view, while, as we said earlier, being able to search the content is going to bring it to the surface if you know what you're looking for, Microsoft Copilot will bring that information to the surface much more readily. So the part of the preparation you really want to be looking at is finding out and ensuring that the right people have access to the right content. And if your permissions are too broadly offered, or you've got content that's sensitive, that is available to everybody, that will come to the surface. So my suggestion is to start looking at governance around the access. The other piece that's really important around that is information governance. So we've all been, for a long time, of the opinion that just holding on to information is a really good thing. There's no point in getting rid of the data that's 10, 15 years old. It might be useful sometime. And we've all had these conversations, and there's been a general anxiety about not losing anything. In actual fact, now we're moving into this AI world with generative AI. The models are going to use this information as part of responses. So to improve the quality of the responses you're going to get from generative AI, you want to make sure it's being fed or given access to information that's actually pertinent and going to add value to the response.
So could it be that you ask a question, or you're preparing a document, and the generative AI gives you the wrong information?
It could give you information that's 5 years out of date. And so for that reason, thinking about information lifecycle management is also really important. And it's early days because lots of organizations are just kind of getting started with this, but increasingly we're thinking about taking, and talk to our customers about taking a more robust approach to lifecycle management, segregating current and old data more effectively, not just in a folder because you can't really hide that, but putting them into separate libraries and repositories that are outside the scope for Copilot or for searching generally, so that you're only returning results that are really valid and going to add value into the responses you get.
So if a customer rings up Example or Incentra and says, we need help, where's the first thing we do with them?
Well, it's a journey. The journey into Copilot or into any of these modern technologies is a journey, and it's about maturity. If you've already got your governance plans, information lifecycle management, access, all of that kind of stuff absolutely nailed down, then you're ready to start thinking about, well, where are the business use cases for Copilot and where can we get the return on investment and how do we start to think about adoption. But in the stages before that, we definitely recommend starting with a good governance plan, assessing your prerequisites and the state and the maturity of your organization, and thinking about planning ahead. You can run some of these things in parallel, of course, but we have a set of workshops, we have packages of workshops that will start both from the very beginning, just to understand those key concepts and some of the kind of technical considerations, through to building business cases and engaging stakeholders, through to adoption and change management around this, building champions programs and starting to introduce thought leadership into your organization so that real value can be derived from these tools.
So it's not a case of jumping in with both feet first, it's a case of sit back, plan, make sure you're making the right choices for your business.
Yeah, we have a concept, and I'm sure many others do, of crawl, walk and run. But this is definitely a case with new technology exposing important corporate information where taking a well thought through approach is going to serve you better.
So how would a customer actually start this journey?
Well, as with all these things around adoption and bringing new technology into an organization, it's a maturity journey. If you're already absolutely switched on with your information governance and your access policies are entirely right, then you're probably ready to start thinking about your business use cases and engaging with stakeholders. But Incentra and Example IT together offer a whole range of workshop packages that start from the very beginning of building a business case for a pilot, thinking about prerequisites and all the activities you need to do in preparation that we've been discussing earlier before you start to think about adoption. Of course, change management with all these new technologies, especially those that have a wide appeal across the organization, is absolutely key. So don't think that this is a technology project by any stretch. This is going to absorb all of your organization.
It's a business transformational project.
It really is transformational.
And I mean, from that, if they want to get in touch with us, just get in touch with Example IT and we'll drag you guys into the conversation to have that foundation conversation with them, to take them through the Power Hour and the initial workshops to see where they go from that. Very rarely do organisations have all their data ready. So you spend a lot of time in the workshops discussing their data, where it is, the governance, the compliance policies that they have in place. Because it's quite tough for a lot of organisations to get that far.
You're absolutely right, and many people have been sitting on large amounts of data for a very long time. Now's a great opportunity to think, as you develop your use cases, about what information is needed and what's going to really add value in these generative AI models.
Think of it as a cleanse.
That's an opportunity for a cleanse. Yeah, that's right. As you mentioned, we run a series of workshop packages, some of which are designed around preparing the technology, but mostly it's around preparing the business.
And the people.
And the people.
Yeah. To make sure that they understand what they've got at their fingertips.
That's right. And as we said earlier, There are many different Copilots already in existence, and that's only going to increase as Microsoft enable you to create your own Copilots for specific use cases. And we think that's going to be a huge area of development going forwards.
And I know we haven't talked about it today, and we don't really have time to, but you've got the Copilot for sales and Copilot for service. They're already there hooked up with Dynamics,
Exactly.
obviously from a Microsoft point of view, to aid your business to be more productive.
Yeah, and there are various private previews coming along to integrate Copilots more closely into SharePoint, and we're already seeing things like Copilot in things like Loop and in Power Platform, and you've probably already come across the ones in the developer environments in
Yes,
GitHub and things.
GitHub.
Yeah. So lots of different Copilots, all with different use cases, but the fundamentals that we discussed earlier around the what's known as grounding of Copilot in your Microsoft 365 tenant is crucial, and that's the really distinguishing factor from the other vendors' AI platforms. It's managing the scope and protecting your corporate proprietary information within the Microsoft environment.
Thank you, Edmund, for providing us with this extra insight into Copilot and what potentially we could be doing with it for customers. And we're looking into what all customers could be doing. If you want to get in touch, if you want to explore some of these workshops, if you'd like to have a chat with us about what is Copilot, how we can move forward, then get in touch with Example IT via our website, via LinkedIn, whichever social media platform you'd prefer, and come and talk to us.